everybody out there, there's stuff inside you that is sort of latent. It may be hidden. You might have had a little hint of it here and there, but you don't know when it's going to come out. Like, you cannot pigeonhole yourself. You do not know what may become of you and what you may become and how you may impact others.
Welcome to the Lead to Win podcast. This week we visit with Mark Ryall, author, artist, retired teacher, and former cross-country coach, about helping you and those you lead overcome mental barriers to achieve more. I'm your host, Bo Bergen. Let's get to work. We have an exciting show for you today as we welcome author, artist, retired teacher, and former cross-country coach Mark Ryall to the show. Mark, welcome and thanks for coming on.
It's my pleasure, Bo, and it's great to be on your podcast, Lead to Win.
A little bit about Mark. Mark recently retired from teaching economics at Hillfield Strathallan College in Hamilton, Ontario. His first love in coaching was always cross-country running, a sport that he felt made students stronger mentally and physically, and which promoted teamwork and mutual support. The speculative fiction, Age Decoded, is Mark's first novel. He wrote it to educate himself and the world about the imminent tsunami of genetic engineering. CRISPR-like technology will impact humans in physical and psychological ways, thus fundamentally affecting what it means to be human. The story peers 100 to 200 years into the future, allowing the reader to critically imagine this new scientific thriller. Mark also just published his second book, Run Daughter, Run Father, which provides stories, anecdotes, and scientific advice on running and racing. It highlights the training adventures of him and his daughter, Stephanie, whom Mark coached and ran with. The insights are targeted at younger and older age group competitors. Mark competes in triathlons and represented Canada in the 2019 ITU World Age Group Championships in Lausanne, Switzerland. He also recently competed in the World Age Group Championships in Spain in 2023. As hobbies, Mark enjoys acrylic art and snooker. His education includes bachelor's and master's degrees, and he also earned his PhD from the University of Toronto. Please welcome, possibly the most interesting man in the world after that introduction, Mark Ryall. Mark, again, welcome to the show, and thanks for being here.
Thanks, and congratulations on starting a new podcast. It's great to see your energy, and all the best moving forward.
Yeah, I appreciate that. My first question for you, looking at your bio, what in the world is snooker?
Well, snooker is like pool. So in the United States, they have 9-ball and 8-ball pool. In Canada and more of the Commonwealth nations, we play snooker, which is a similar game with a cue ball, and you're trying to put them in the holes, shoot the balls into the holes with a cue ball. So have you seen pool in the United States? Or
yeah, I'm familiar with billiards and things like that. I just had never heard it called snooker. So
snooker's on a larger table. It's much larger. It's a 6-foot by 12-foot table, and we have 15 red balls. So let's say it's more the English game. In the United States, there is some snooker, but not as much as billiards.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Good to know. How'd you get into art?
Well, art, my dear wife, Lynn, who I've been married to for over 30 years now, is a former art teacher, and she's an artist. So I think some of it just rubbed off on me watching her work hard and at the studio. And I got a little studio spot myself about 10 years ago and started dabbling a bit. For me, it's more of a hobby, but I do enjoy doing sports. I've done some sports portraits, and I've done some drawings of, I like old historic structures, like old bridges and old buildings. And here in Hamilton, we have a lot of that. we're an old steel city, sort of like Pittsburgh. So it's great fodder for dabbling in art. That's how I got into it. I still do a
Sure.
little bit, but it's just a hobby.
That's very cool. It's funny you say that because my parents were both art teachers. My dad taught art for 37 years, and my mom about 20. So I'm
Wow.
very familiar with the world of art. What kind of led you to writing books?
Well, I retired just before COVID hit, so about 3 years ago, and so I suddenly had a lot more time because, as you know, teaching and education can take a lot of energy and time and commitment. So, but I suddenly had all this time, and especially with COVID, the first year with all the lockdowns and all that, being stuck in the house, I had a lot of time on my hands suddenly, and I'd been sort of toying with this a draft of a book on genetic engineering. So I had written a little bit over the last couple of years previous to that, and so my wife said to me, "Why don't you use the time to dust off that draft and finish off that book?" And I said, "Perfect idea." That I started that, and after about I'd say 7 or 8 months, I had a final copy ready. So yeah, that's a science fiction novel.
So I want to hear a little bit about your coaching journey. So obviously that's my area. By day, I am a athletic administrator, athletic director, whatever you want to call it. So I'm kind of entrenched in the world of athletics. So what kind of caught my eye is your love for cross country running and distance running. Give me a little background on when you were in the world of education on when you used to coach cross country.
Right. So I actually started coaching hockey, and that was fine. That was great. But I don't really have much of a hockey background, so I was learning as I went. But it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that. And I coached hockey for 7 or 8 years. Then I coached golf because golf was pretty big at our school. We had we're the independent school, the private school league up in Ontario here. So we had about 50 schools involved in that league. And I became quite involved with that. I was also the convener of that organization. But I turned to cross country about the last 10 years of my teaching. So I'm now, picture me 50 years old. I'm teaching economics. I've been coaching these other sports, and suddenly I turned to cross country. And what made me do it was my daughter. She started running. She just had this inner urge to start competing and running and training, and she was quite young. So we can talk about some issues with young runners, but she was only 9 or 10 years old and wanted to start training, which is somewhat unusual. So I had to go with her. I couldn't let her run in the city of Toronto on her own. So I had to start jogging with her, and that got me into running. And then I thought, you know what, you're running now. Why don't you look into cross country coaching? And so really, because my dear daughter, Stephanie, I started coaching cross country, and it was a wonderful journey. I'm just so glad I got into that sport.
Yeah, I admire people who are mentally tough enough to run. I've never been a runner myself, but I definitely admire the determination and the mental toughness it takes to be a distance runner. So, last question in this first section here. When you think about your journey thus far, you've been through education and getting into some new things later in life. When you're gone, what do you want people to remember you by? What legacy do you want to be known for, and what do you want to leave behind?
That's a great question, Bo. There's Jack Daniels, who's one of the big running physiological writers down in the United States. Jack Daniels. He talked about athletes, and just generally, your listeners can probably appreciate this. He isolated 4 factors for what makes successful athletes. A couple of them are pretty obvious, like talent does matter. There's no doubt about it. Some people are blessed with superb talent, and some people are not, but they can still be good athletes. The second thing is motivation. We've all seen how important that is, and the differences between certain students and athletes. So we've got talent and motivation, but the third and fourth ones, that's what I want to be remembered for. So those first 2 are coming from the athletes themselves. The third and fourth ones come from people like you and I and the educators around them. and sports administrators and coaches and parents. And that those other two are opportunity and direction. And they're very, very important. So the opportunity is, as people might guess, giving people the facilities or the time or the resources to get into sports. Like say a young person might need the equipment and they may need a team to join. And the school can provide that, or maybe a club. And then direction. I would love to be remembered for providing the direction part. So once people have the opportunity, they're motivated, they have some talent, they get in there. I'd like to be someone that some athletes remember as providing that fourth factor, direction, which can take a lot of different shades and forms. It could be just encouraging an athlete through tough times. It could be motivating an athlete to at least try something. That was my specialty, getting people to try cross country. Like you almost had to use reverse psychology on it. You know, you can stop somebody in the hallway. Do you like to get muddy and dirty and climb and kill yourself and feel awful? Why don't you join cross country? Give it a try. And that sort of reverse psychology sometimes works with some people, or just get people to try it in other ways. So, for example, at my school, Hillfield Strathallan, I had a great breakthrough with the administrators, the athletic directors, when they agreed to allow some students to dual sport. So because we had no running culture at our school, so most kids would play soccer, play hockey, whatever. And I said, look, some of these soccer players, they have a 95 average in the school, so we're not concerned about their academics. Why don't you let them do some training with me over the summer? So I'll whip them into shape. That'll help with their soccer, and then let them play soccer, but also run some races for our school. And that had not been allowed. So just that gave them the opportunity to at least try the sport, give it a shot. And some of them loved it. And I even had a few who loved cross country so much they stopped playing soccer. But that didn't happen too often. Usually it was like the dual sport thing, and it helped the school. The kids and the parents were quite happy with it. As long as their academics was strong enough, that opened the door for it. So I was able to get the numbers up just through that opportunity front, with the blessing of my athletic director.
That's good stuff. We deal with the same issues, making that pitch to get somebody to just try it. And some kids just latch onto that. They want that challenge. They want that, whether it's physical or mental. And but the vast majority of them just need to get out there and try it. And then, some things you mentioned about the sport of cross country, it develops teamwork and mutual support. And I've found that once kids get a taste of that, they're locked in. And
exactly.
They're runners for life, and it's a pretty cool thing to see. So
it's not an individual sport. It's very much a team sport. You're right. And I used to have the thing I called the fourth runner. So in our competitions up here, you had to get 4 runners across the finish line to have any team score at all. So if you had 3 great runners, it didn't matter. You got no score. You had to get 4. So I developed this thing where you basically worship whoever the fourth runner is. We did not have a big school. So we sometimes had problems getting enough for a team. So if we could get 4 or 5 runners at the junior boys level, grade 10 level, for example, that would be awesome. And whoever that fourth runner across the line is, I made sure everybody worshiped them, congratulated them, cheered them on as they came in, because they were often buried in the masses. You could hardly see them. They're not at the front of the field probably. And the fifth runner wanted to become the fourth runner. Whoever the fifth and sixth runner were, if you had enough, would strive to become that fourth runner, fourth across the finish line. They were so important. They were the anchor. So that was a good thing. It's good in business too. Like, we often give accolades to the top performers, and it's easy to do, and they stand out and they're easy to see and appreciate. But the people who are plugging away behind the scenes a little bit out of the limelight, those people, teammates of business, whatever, can often be really, really important, and they need to be shown appreciation too. And that's what I tried to do there with the fourth runner concept.
Absolutely. We often just see the people that get their picture on the plaque on the wall, or but we don't often see the people that are really keeping the company going on a day-to-day basis, and they need to be celebrated too. And it's at the end of the day, it's all about improvement. If somebody's improving and constantly working to get better, they deserve to be recognized for that. So,
right on.
All right, I want to get into a little bit about your books. The first one, that's a little bit out of my realm, but I do want to hear about what led you to write that book, and definitely want to hear about the second book as well. But just kind of go into your journey as a novelist and
Sure.
what books you've written.
So the first book, really the plot centers around this CRISPR technology that you mentioned, CRISPR, which is the preeminent technology in genetic engineering right now. Jennifer Doudna from the United States won a Nobel Prize in the year 2020 for her work on improving that technique and making it so much stronger. So I was interested in that because there's a lot happening on that front. I wanted to learn more about it. And as you mentioned, I did world triathlon competitions. And I did one in 2017 too. I didn't put in my bio. So 2017, I was in Rotterdam, and I was at a meeting with some of my fellow competitors. And I'm in the 60 to 65-year-old age group. Back then it was 55, 59. So, and I was younger. I was like 56 or something. And I was talking to a guy who was 59, and we're in the same age group. And he said, "You have such a big advantage over me. You're 3 years younger." And I'm thinking, my God, are you that fine-tuned? You can feel that 3 years? Like we're both old farts, right? We're in our 50s. Does it matter? And he said, yes, it matters a lot. And he proceeded to explain to me how you lose 1% of your aerobic capacity on average per year at that age. So I have a 3% advantage over him, evidently, right? Because I'm 3 or 4 years younger, 3 or 4%. And on a 2.5 hour race, that's 150 minutes, which is 5 minutes. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe you got a point here, So I started thinking about aging and competitiveness, performance, and the inevitability of, because we're all mortal right now, of athletic decline as you get older, performance. So, and then I was reading about this genetic engineering stuff and the CRISPR stuff, and I found that there was a lot of actually serious research going on where the people from Harvard and Kyoto University, Japan, and various other places, Stanford, UCLA, they want to eradicate aging. Like they think aging is a disease. I don't necessarily agree with this, but human aging they see as a disease which must be and will be ended. For example, George Church from Harvard University said he thinks he can end aging within 20 years. So there will not be any more aging. And some of these people are working on reversing aging. You can believe that. So that's where I thought, let's see, what would the world be like if we did this? Not just from a sports perspective, but wow, what would happen if this happened? And that's why I started that novel.
Yeah, like I said, I've done of course I'm young still, or I like to consider myself young. I don't feel it sometimes, but that's a very interesting topic that I really haven't looked into a whole lot, but I probably will now.
Yeah, it's intriguing. It really is. And from the sports standpoint, like I will predict right now that when so many ramifications to this, a lot of good ones like curing diseases, not just aging, but cystic fibrosis and Alzheimer's. A lot of diseases have already been targeted by this genetic engineering. Can be very good. But I will predict right now that the World Anti-Doping Agency, in fact, they already have a policy against genetic engineering to improve athletic performance. They're going to have an issue on their hands when people figure out how to make themselves faster, stronger, whatever, using these other techniques. This is not drug doping. This is changing your DNA.
Mm-hmm. What about your other book, Run Daughter, Run Father, Run Daughter?
Yeah. So it's actually Run Daughter, Run Father. I put the daughter first because, as I mentioned, my lovely daughter Stephanie got me into running. So
sure.
she's the first runner, and just to point out, like it wasn't a parent pressuring a child; it was the child sort of inviting the parent to join them. So anyway, so that was an easier book to write because I knew a lot about it. I lived through it all with my daughter. The last 20 years we've trained together sometimes, especially when she was younger. I've done some coaching of her, especially when she was before high school. After that, she had great coaches in high school and university. She didn't need my guidance or too much. And just cheering her on and cheering each other on, and she's still competitively running, and I'm still doing these triathlons. So yeah, it was an easy book to write, but my goal was to make it insightful for other runners, especially older and younger runners. Like she was younger and I was older, and people who want to compete at a fairly high level, and a lot of lessons learned, a lot of stupid things I did, and in there are funny little stories, things that awkward things that happened along the way, but the journey is great. And so I wanted it to be a bit like a training manual, but with lots of funny or anecdotal stories and tips within the book.
Sure. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to check it out. And it's always easier to write things that come from your heart. And it sounds like you have the relationship with your daughter that I hope to have later on in life with mine. And so I definitely plan to check out your book for sure. So distance running, what made you fall in love with it, and how has it impacted your life so far? I know you've touched on a few things, but what kind of sparked that initial love for the sport?
Yeah, so I did do a little bit of cross country in high school for about 2 years. I loved that. And then I did run a marathon when I was 20 years old, and I had some success there. But then I got injured. I'm fairly old, so I'm back in the early 1980s. We're talking here, where I did this stuff. And so, it wasn't like I had never run before, but then I took probably 20 or 25 years and became quite sedentary. No biking, swimming, running, or anything. And my daughter had no idea I had done any running. So I guess it was great just to get back into it. Technology improved a lot. So like for things like orthotics and foot plant and biomechanics and shoes were way better. So I quickly learned that I could, that injury I had in the early 1980s, it was nothing. I could get through that easily just by getting a pair of orthotics. And so I was able to run suddenly in my mid 40s further distances than I could when I was in my 20s. And my daughter was a motivation, but I quickly became sort of self-absorbed in it too, and able to do it on my own. So yeah, it was great to get back. And I often did have dreams about running in my 30s and 40s. When I stopped running, I still dreamt about it, and so the racing and all that was pretty cool. I like the competition too. So it was great to actually get back in there. Now I wasn't going to win any races, and I'm now 45 or 50 years old, right, and running. But they have age group categories, and a lot of my book talks about that age group adjustment and how you center on that side of it. And you're sort of trying to self-improve, like you say, but you're doing it at an age group equivalent performance. That's the important thing. Don't worry about those young bucks who are 20 years old. So it was great to get back into it and experience the racing again.
So with that, you talk about you had a period of your life where you were younger and in the running game, and then you go on and pick it back up later in life. Discuss the changes or compare the mental approach from when you were in your 20s and now later on to both of those periods of your life.
Yeah. So in my 40s and 50s and now 60s, I've learned a lot. So you're definitely more prepared. You have to be. It's not willy-nilly, just go out there and do this. When I was in my early 20s, I wasn't as structured. I really didn't know what I was doing, but pretty gung-ho, but definitely not that knowledgeable. Now I'm much more organized, more methodical. I have to be careful. I need more time for recovery. For example, when I was young, I could do 2 or 3 speed workouts, like really intense workouts a week. Now I'm doing maybe 2 every 10-day cycle, and that's pretty good. I need time to recover. I need more sleep. I need to stretch more. I need to do cross training, like some weights and whatnot, and more stretching. And Also the triathlon has been great because it's getting me into swimming and biking, which are alternative aerobic exercises that don't pound my body as much. So I'm not even running more 4 or 5 days a week now. So I think I'm smarter, wiser, and you have to be, but still I am slowing down. I remember when my daughter started running with me when she was 8 or 9. She would be huffing and puffing and try to keep up with me. If it was a hard run for her, if it was an easy run for me. And then when she was about 12 or 13, 14, she started becoming very fast. Like she was one of the top 3 in Ontario. So I now was huffing and puffing to keep up with her. It was an easy run for her and a harder run for me. And now my only hope, if she goes for a run and wants me to join her, I got to get a bike, basically. I'm not really, I'm still pretty fit, but I cannot, like she's doing a 3:30, 4 minute per kilometer pace, and I cannot do that. I can't even do that for 1 or 2 kilometers now. So she's fast. And so, it's funny, but time changes it all, right?
Sure. So my listeners, or my target audience, is leaders. Okay, what advice, if any, would you give to people that are in leadership roles, and what mental toughness exercises or habits, if any, would you recommend for them to get over the hump?
Yeah, so I would say just one thing that really helped me, and I think back to the writing. Like you would ask me 10 years ago, would you be a writer? I'd say, what drugs are you smoking? What's going on here? I am not a guy who ever thought he would be wanting to write books, whether it's a science fiction or biographical nonfiction, which I've done. And I'm working on a 3rd book right now. I'm very excited about this. It's not going to be out for about a year, but I am working on another book. So there's people out there, everybody out there, there's stuff inside you that is sort of latent. It may be hidden. You might have had a little hint of it here and there, but you don't know when it's going to come out. Like you cannot pigeonhole yourself. You do not know what may become of you and what you may become and how you may impact others in even the near future. Your life is not scripted. You're not in a pigeonhole, and anything is possible. So you may like, for me, I waited just till retired, and then I had that extra time. COVID really helped me. It's forced me to say, hey, why don't you finish that draft of that book? And then I became a writer. COVID actually made me a writer. So you're trying this podcast, which is fantastic. You weren't doing that a couple of years ago, so that's a new venture, right? That maybe if somebody asked you 5 years ago, would you be doing podcast? You would say, no, I'm not that type of a person. I don't know. It's just, it could be something in the arts. It could be some hobby, like painting or whatever, or it could be anything. You just don't know. And your career is one thing, but should not just totally define you. It could be something completely divorced from your career. Your career might be in accounting, and then you might end up doing something diametrically different, like being a hiking expert or a historian, or getting into some theater or whatever. So I just encourage people to be open-minded about themselves and leading themselves really to different ventures and being ready to take on those challenges.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So I like to kind of wrap up my first couple podcast episodes with some rapid fire questions, and
Sure.
some of them are very relevant, and some of them are just random, just to kind of get to know you.
Okay.
So first question: favorite food?
Oh, sour cream and onion potato chips.
I like it. Second question: if you had to live anywhere else in the world, where would you live?
Let's say Spain, southern Spain, off the Mediterranean.
Have you ever been there?
Yes.
I have not. How is it?
It's The water is even warm enough for me. So you got to like that Mediterranean. It's like 80, 85 degrees down there, and it's beautiful.
For sure. Okay. You answered my third question, actually. Do you have any future plans to write another book?
Yeah, so I'm working on a book that's going to involve artificial intelligence and reading people's minds, which I think is another frontier in science right now that's going to impact everybody.
Fourth question. Would you rather swim 5 miles or run 25?
It's still run 25, but I am becoming a little bit more comfortable with swimming, which is sort of used to be my Achilles heel in triathlon, but I'm getting a little better at it now. I don't know if I could go 5 miles, so I have to go with the running side.
Yeah. Last question. What is the most valuable characteristic a leader can have?
I would say be curious, be open, and open and curious, open-minded.
That's good. All right. Well, Mark, again, this has been a great conversation, and I've learned a lot just by listening to what you have to say. And I really thank you for connecting with me and agreeing to come on my brand new podcast. And I hope our listeners can take some pieces from our conversation and apply them to their circumstance. And but again, thank you for coming on, and I wish you the best of luck going forward. I'm planning on checking out your book and following you here in the next few years, and just good luck to you.
Yeah, thanks for hosting me, Bo, and all the best with the Lead to Win podcast. You're doing a great job so far, and keep it up.
All right, I appreciate you. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Lead to Win podcast. You can find the retail link to Mark's books in the description of this episode, as well as his social media links if you'd like to connect. Be sure to set your notifications to receive updates on new episodes. The Lead to Win podcast can be found on Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple Podcasts, and a new episode comes out every Tuesday. I'm your host, Bo Bergen. Until next time, now go do the work.